We begin today the Gemara 7 lines up from the bottom of the Amud on Daf Yud Zayin Amud Beis. Amalei Mar Keshisha. The Gemara before brought a statement that Rabbi Yochanan said there's a concept called Maisa Bezdin, and that's a condition that Bezdin obligates you to pay, and it refers to a ksuba. Even if you don't write a ksuba, you still have to pay the ksuba. And because it's a Tanai Bezdin, there's a very strong obligation to pay, and you won't be believed to say that you paid up unless you have proof of this from Aiden. If you just claim that you paid up, you won't be believed. That was the halacha that he said. So on this, Abai brought a Mishnah, Masechta Gittin, where it says pretty clearly this thing, Hoitzia get, ve'eni muksuba. A woman brings a get, just a proof that she was divorced, and she has no ksuba, she can collect her ksuba. So you see right over there in that Mishnah this point. So then Abai discusses this. Abai says, but maybe that Mishnah is talking about a situation where people don't write a ksuba. And then Abai comes back and says, no. Because by Edison, you don't write a ksuba. And nevertheless, she has power to collect her ksuba without writing a ksuba. Why? How? Why can't anybody claim, or the children or the husband himself, if he divorces her after Edison, say that it was paid up? It must be that there's this power of Maisa Bezdin. Because a ksuba is a Maisa Bezdin, so therefore you can collect it, and the husband can't claim that he paid it up unless he has a clear eye for this. That's what the Gemara concluded until here. So the Gemara here is going to question the whole premise of this whole point here, that even by Edison, there's an obligation to pay a ksuba, even in a case where there was no actual ksuba written. Is there any source for this? So the Gemara says like this: Amalei Makshisha Bered Rav Chisda Ravashi. Valmanim and Edison the Lisla ksuba. This halacha that we're saying here, that a widow only after the first stage of marriage, Edison, that she also gets a ksuba minolan. What's the source for this? And the Gemara is going to try to bring two sources. One is Ilay, if you'll say, Mahadithnan, from a Mishnah that says, Nisarmala in Garsha, a woman that becomes an almana or divorced, Beiman Edison or Beiman Anisuin, whether after Edison or Nisuin, Goive Esakel, she collects all of her ksuba. So you clearly see here, this Braisa is saying, or Mishnah actually is saying, that she collects all of her ksuba from Edison as well. And the Gemara is assuming that that includes even a case where there was no ksuba written for her. But the Gemara says there's no raya from her. Dilme heichad kosavla. Maybe that's speaking in a case where the husband wrote her clearly a ksuba, so therefore she collects the ksuba at both from Edison and from the Suan. And if you'll ask back on this, if so, Maila Memra, what is this Mishnah coming to be mechadish? If the husband wrote her a ksuba at the time of Edison, why shouldn't she then collect the ksuba? Says the Gemara, I can tell you, La Fukim de Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, coming to exclude from the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. The Omar, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, Shulei kosavla el al manas l'koinsa. When the husband writes the ksuba, in the ksuba there's the basic ksuba, which is either a mana or masayim for a besula, and then there's additional things, taisvis ksuba, additional things that the husband writes into the ksuba. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, all those additional things that the husband is gifting his wife, that's only if he ends up fully marrying her. But if not, then she doesn't get any of that. So over here, this Mishnah is coming to exclude from the opinion of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah itzrachale. That's what the Mishnah is teaching. That when you write the ksuba, if she gets divorced or widowed from the Edison, the husband has to give her the whole thing, including the taisus ksuba. And we don't say that that's only conditional on a full marriage. Now, the Gemara says, I'll prove to you that this Mishnah is talking about a case where there was an actual ksuba written. The Ketani, because the lashon of the Mishnah is goive esakel, that both from Edison or Nisuin, she collects the entire ksuba. What is this? Why is it saying hakel? She collects everything. If the case over here is that the husband actually wrote her a ksuba, so that's why it says that she collects everything written in the ksuba, because it would be not only the basic ksuba of a mana or masayim, but in the actual ksuba, the husband could have written more stuff, taisvis ksuba, other things that he wants to give her. But if you didn't write her a ksuba, why is the Mishnah using the expression that she collects everything? What kind of everything? Mana umasayim hu de islat. The Mishnah should have said that she gets either one mana, if she gets married as an almana, or masayim, if she gets married as a basula. That's what the Mishnah should have said. So the language of the Mishnah is clear that we're talking about when the husband wrote her a ksuba. So we still don't have a source for this idea that an almana from Edison gets a ksuba even without the husband actually writing her a ksuba. So the Gemara tries to bring from another source. Rabbi Barami taught Ishto Yarusa. Person's wife, so a wife that he was only married to her as an arusa, not fully married. So here the halacha is as follows: Loi oinen. On the day that she passes away, the husband will not have the halacha of an oinen. An oinen is on the day that a very close relative passes away. You're not allowed to eat from kachim. But over here, his wife, which was only an arusa, that halacha of oinen does not apply to the husband. And v'loi metamala, if he was a kohen, so one of the people a kohen is allowed to be metama to, and he has a mitzvah actually to bury his wife. But if she's an arusa, then he's not supposed to. He's not allowed to bury. He's not allowed to be metama to her. The pasuk, when it talks about the wife regarding the kohen, it uses the term she'eray. She'eray means only after full marriage, not arusa. V'chein, and similar, he loy einenes. If the husband dies, she doesn't have the halacha of an einen or einenes for the fact that her husband died, and v'loy metama loy, and she has no mitzvah to bury, to be metama her husband. Mesa, again regarding this harusa, if she dies, Eina Yarsha, the husband does not inherit her. The din of a husband yarshining everything from his wife is after full marriage. Meis hu, if the husband dies only after this first stage of marriage, Goivek subasa, she collects her ksuba from the children. So you see here clearly the Braisa is saying regarding an harusa that she collects her ksuba. So again, the Gemara was assuming that means even if there was no actual ksuba written, it's a tnai bezdin from Edison that she gets a ksuba. So the Gemara asks again, how do you know? Dilma the kasav law. Maybe the case over here is that the husband wrote her a ksuba from the time of Edison, and that's why it's saying that she collects a ksuba. Now if you'll argue and say, the kasav law ma'ila memra, if he actually wrote her clearly, directly a ksuba, what's the chiddush that she collects the ksuba? So the Gemara says, the chiddush over here is the other cases that the Mishnah, or the Braisa here says, that Mesa, Eina Yarsha, Itzrachalei. The main chiddush over here is to say that if she dies, that the husband does not inherit her. She's not yet his full wife, so he doesn't inherit her. So therefore, the Gemara's conclusion over here is, we don't have a clear raya from anywhere that after Edison, if the husband dies or divorces her, that she gets a ksuba, even without the husband ever writing a ksuba. So if we don't have a raya for that, so now the Gemara goes back, Ella Abaye, so if so, Abaye that was analyzing the Mishnah that the Gemara brought before on Daf Yud Zayin. As I mentioned, that Mishnah on Daf Yud Zayin was quoted from Masechta Gittin. There the Mishnah says, Haitziya get ve'ein imay ksuba, goivik ksubasa. A woman can collect her ksuba just with a get, and not with a ksuba. And Abaye there explained that it must be that there's a certain power of Maisa Bezdin, of a Tanai Bezdin, because otherwise, by Edison, how does she collect her ksuba? Okay, but now the Gemara explains that by Edison, if the husband didn't write her a ksuba, not necessarily does she even collect her ksuba. So we can't say that from Edison there's any basis to say that she could collect a ksuba without having a ksuba, a document of a ksuba. So then why is Abaye learning in that Mishnah there that there must be a raya to what Rabbi Yochanan had said, that every time a woman collects a ksuba, there's a Maisa Bezdin, and therefore the husband cannot claim that it was paid up, even if she doesn't have a ksuba in her hands. Why did he learn that Mishnah that way? So the Gemara now explains as follows. Ela Abaye migufa de masnisin kahadabei. It's from the lashon of that Mishnah itself that caused Abaye to have charata with his argument that he had on Rabbi Yochanan, and he agrees to Rabbi Yochanan there must be this concept of Maisa Bezdin. We see it from the Mishnah itself. How? Because the Yisrael Kedaitach, if you're going to say, like Abaye wanted to say, b'makom she'ein kaisvin ksuba askinon, that Mishnah is talking about a case where the custom is that people don't write a ksuba, and only there could you collect without presenting a ksuba. But otherwise, you must present a ksuba, otherwise the husband could claim that it was paid. But still, it's not going to explain, even in such a place. How do you have a power to collect a ksuba without having a ksuba in your hands? The get, Hainuk Subasa, will say that over here in the place where they don't write a ksuba, so the fact that she shows a get, that she was divorced, that takes the place of a ksuba, so she could collect her ksuba. But the question though is, how could she collect just with a get? Otu get, mana, masayim, ksivbe? In the get, does she have any raya? Do you see in the get, does it say how much the husband owes her? Does he owe her 1 mana? Does he owe her 2 mana? What kind of a ksuba was this? So how could the get b'chlal be used to replace the ksuba in order to collect her ksuba? So the question still remains, with what power is she collecting her ksuba, even in a place where there's a minhag not to write a ksuba? So how is she collecting her ksuba? And if you'll say, even the Tekina Rabbanu Levmig Bala, since the Rabbanan instituted that she could collect with this get, Command the chsiv beidami. It's as if it says in it clearly that the husband owes her the ksubah. But nevertheless, litin v'lema paraiti. Why shouldn't the husband be able to come and claim that I paid it up? Why shouldn't he have the right to claim that he paid it? Even if she can collect her ksuba with the get, but the husband can simply say, I paid it already. And if you'll argue back and say, that we say to the husband, if you actually paid her the ksuba already, so you should have torn up the get. Since in this place where they don't write a ksuba, she collects the ksuba money with her get, so why when you paid up the ksuba, didn't you tear the get? On Malon, the husband would say, she didn't allow me to tear up the get. Why not? Amra, because she said, I want to use this get as a proof that I'm divorced to be able to get remarried. So she didn't let me tear up the get. And if you'll argue further and say that we say to the husband, still, you should have torn the get, and then you go to the Bezdin, and the Bezdin will write to you in the back of the get that's torn up, Gita dinan, this following get, the karanuhu, that we tore it up, lo mishum the gita psuluhu. It's not because it was a puzzle get. The only reason it was torn up is in order that you shouldn't collect with it a second time. This is what the husband should have written on the get. So the Gemara is arguing, maybe we could still say that she can collect the get, the ksuba money that is with her get, and the husband will not be able to claim that it got paid up because the husband should have torn up the get and written this in the back of the get. But the Gemara says we can't rely on this. Why? Because Otu, Kol Magbi, Beidina Magbi, anytime a person collects money for her ksuba, does she go to the Bezdin, and is the Bezdin involved in this? Not necessarily were they in the Bezdin, so therefore the Bezdin can't write them for this. She got her money and she left, and therefore the fact that the get was not torn up is no raya. There's no raya that the husband did not pay the ksuba. So why can't the husband claim that he paid it up? So the point that the Gemara is concluding over here is it must be. Therefore, Abaye says that the halacha that Rabbi Yochanan said in the beginning is when it comes to a ksuba, because it's a ma'aseh bezdin. So it's a Tnai Bezdin that it's collected until the person proves that he paid it with Eidim. If you can't prove it, a husband cannot come and just say paraiti that I paid it. That's the conclusion of the Sinyan. Okay, like in the Gemara, we continue with the next Mishnah. Zok the Heilige Mishnah, Motza Gitei Noshim V'Shechrurei Avodim. A person found whether a get of a woman or Shechrurei Avodim, whether a star to free an Eved, or daiteki. Daiteki is a document of a gift that a person that's about to pass away, writes, or matana, a document for a gift, or v'shoivrin, receipts for something that was paid up. Harei zeh lo yachzer. Don't return it to the person that it belongs to. Why? Shani oimer, because I say ksuvim noyu. Maybe all of these documents, they were written for this purpose, but v'nimlach alein shaloi litnon. But then the person may have changed his mind. He decided not to use it, not to give it. What's the raya that it was actually something that was given to this woman, or that shtach shechur was given for the yeved, and so on. So therefore we can't return it to who it belongs to. The only reason we don't return it is because we're concerned that the husband may have changed his mind, or different people here in this case, they may have changed their mind and they didn't actually give it. Ha amatnu. But if, and here the Gemara is going to focus on the first case of the Mishnah regarding the get. In a case of a get, if the husband himself is standing here and his get was found, and the husband says, give it to the wife, give it to her, then we would give it to her. And we're not concerned that this is maybe some other get. Now the Gemara says that it would be mashma from our Mishnah, even if the get got lost and it was found after a long period of time, and now it's found and the husband says, give it back to her. We're going to give it back to her. So the Gemara asks on this, but I'll ask you from what it says in the Mishnah Masechta Gittin. Over there, the Mishnah, it says that in such a case, when you lose a get, you can't give it back. So the Mishnah there says, maybe get, a shliach brings a get, and v'avadei mena, and he lost his get. So do you give it back to the shliach to be able to give it to the isha? Matzela alter. So the halacha that the Mishnah says is, if you find a get soon after you lost it, so then kosher. We say that this get is still kosher. This is the get that was written for this woman, and give it back to the shliach so he can give it for her. But in Lav, if you don't find it right away, and there are people that are coming and going, there are people that are traveling in this area, so then puzzle. This get is puzzle because could be there's somebody else that has the same name, the man and the woman, they both have the same name, and the get was written for someone else. It wasn't written for this Isha. So to give it to this Isha, it's Shaloi Lishma. You can't use the get for this Isha. So what do we see over here? The Mishnah in Gittin is saying that when you lose a get, even if the husband agrees and says, give it back, but if it was after a long time, there's another concern over here. This get might have been written for a different man and woman. But over here, the Mishnah, it's mashma, that if the husband says, give it back, we give it back, even if after it's a long period of time. So the Gemara answers, Amar Rabbe answers this contradiction, Loi kasha. There's no contradiction. Kan, b'makom shashayaris mitzuyos. Here in the Mishnah in Gittin, it's because there's a lot of people traveling back and forth in this area. So we say it's possible that this get fell from someone else. Same name, husband and wife, same name. So it's a get that belongs to someone else. So you can't give it back. Our Mishnah is in a case where it's a place where there's not a lot of people there at all. So when the get falls, even after a long period of time, you can give it back to the woman. Another detail, another thing that Rabbi says for this halacha, even though it's not necessary to answer the contradiction, but he still added another point. Is the whole concern that we're saying when there's a lot of people traveling here, so the get may have fallen from someone else that happens to have the same name as this husband and wife. When are we concerned of that? That's only if, using the example of this name, Yosef ben Shimon, if there is another city where this get was written, and in that city, we know that there are two people that have the same name. Him and his wife have the same name. If you know for a fact that there's another city, in that city where the get was written, there are two people that have the same name, so then you're going to have to be concerned that maybe this is a get that fell from that person. But if it's not, if there's no such a chazaka, if you don't know for a fact that there's two people with the same name, even if there's a lot of people traveling here, you could still give back the get to the woman. So basically, Rabbi is saying that the only time that we're concerned and we don't give back the get is if there's two conditions. Number one, there's a lot of people traveling here and may have fallen down from someone else, and the place where the get was written is a place that we know that there are two people that have the same name. So the Gemara explains, why do we add the second point here? If you're not going to add this point, then kashi de Rabba de Rabba. We're going to have a contradiction in Rabba's opinion. Because there's a story that happened, there was a get that was found by the Bezdin of Rav Huna. And in the get that was written, where does this get come from? B'Shviri Mosa, in the city of Shviri, the Al Rochis Nara, which is by the river of Rochis. So what do we do with this get? Do we give it back to the wife or not? So Amar Rav Huna says, Chayshinon Lishnei Shviri. We're actually concerned that maybe there's a different city with the same name Shviri, and could be there's somebody that has the same name like what's written here in this get. So here we see Rav Huna was very machmir. We're even concerned there could be another city with the same name and other people, we never heard of them, and maybe they have the same name as this get. That's how Rav Huna paskin. So Rav Chisda says to Rabbe, Pukayimba, you go out and analyze this halacha, the Lord Minoch Rav Huna, because tomorrow Rav Huna is going to ask you about this halacha. Do we have to be machmir here or not? So Nafak, Rabba went out, Dok, and he was medayik about this. He looked into it, Va'ashkach, and he found, and he said that there's a Mishnah over here later in this Pedic, in Bava Metzia, the Mishnah says that Tnan, call Maisa Bezdin, anytime you have a Maisa Bezdin, which means something that came from the Bezdin and Bezdin certified it, you find, let's say, a Shtar Choiv or whatever it may be, Hareze Yachser. You should give it back to the one that the Shtar belongs to. Okay, so therefore he said over here, if it says this halacha b'negei ta'ashtar, that a ma'isa bezdin, you give it back. So Rabbi Paskin, that the same thing we should say over here regarding this get, that we can give back the get to the woman, and we don't have to be concerned about the fact that maybe there's another city that has the same name. We're not concerned about this when it comes to any other shtar, so we're not concerned over here also b'negei to this get. That's how Rabbi Paskin. Now, where was this get found? It was found in the Bezdin of Rav Huna. This is a place which is very busy. People come and go there. It's a Bezdin that's busy. And the Kapashet Rabbe, and what's Rabbe paskening here? The Yachser, that you should give this get back to the woman. So what do you see here? So you can't simply say that according to Rabbe, as long as it's a place that a lot of people come there, we have to be concerned that it might have fallen from someone else. Over here we see that Rabbe says give it back. So Alma, from this we see that we must add another detail to this. Only if you know that in that city where the get was written, there's another person with the same name in, then we're concerned. We don't give it back. but if we don't know that, then we're not concerned, then we can give it back. And Rabbi wasn't concerned for what Rav Huna was concerned about, that maybe there's another city that we don't know of that has the same name with people with the same name. Rabbi wasn't concerned of that. So the Gemara says, Avad Rabbi Ovde Bahu Gitte de Shtakach. Rabbi also paskin this way, a halacha regarding a certain get that was found by Kisna de Pumpedise, by the flax of Pumpedise. Kishmaite. According to his halacha, Rabbi paskin that you could give back the get to the woman. Now the Gemara explains exactly what is this place of the flax in Pumbedisa. Ikadamri, there are those that say, Heiche de Mizavni Kitne. It was a place where they sell flax. Now, if it's a place where they sell flax, this is a very busy place. People come and go to buy. But Vuhu Shaloi Hochsaku. And the reason why he was matter to give it back is because the get was written in a place where there was no chazaka that there are two people with the same name there. Even though it's a place where they sell flax and it's very busy. Others say the version of the story was Kitna. This was in Pumbedisa, in the place where they soak the flax, which is not a busy place. There's not a lot of people there. And there we could say, even if the get comes from a place where we know that there are two people with the same name, you could still give it back to the woman, because it's a place that's not busy. There's not a lot of caravans of people coming here. Okay, now the Gemara brings that this whole discussion over here, the stira that we had from our Mishnah, to the Mishnah Masechta Gittin, which Rabbi answered. Here the Gemara brings that Rab Zayda addressed the same issue, but Rab Zayda, he asked a stira from our Mishnah here, not from the Mishnah in Gittin, but from a Braisa. Rab Zayda, Rami Masnisan a Braisa. He asked a contradiction from our Mishnah to what it says in a Braisa. Umeshani, and he also gave an answer to this. What was the question that he asked? Tanan, the Mishnah says, he actually asked the stira from the Mishnah in Masechta Gittin to a Braisa. So the Mishnah in Masechta Gittin says, Hamevi get, a shliach brings a get, Vavadei Menu, when the get got lost, Motzei la'alter, if it was found soon after it got lost, kosher. It's kosher, you can give it back to the woman, or to the shliach to give to the woman. Vimlav, if you didn't find it right away, apostle, you can't give it back. We're concerned maybe it's someone else's get. That's the Mishnah. So the Gemara asks him this, Veramini, because in a Braise it says as follows: Matzah get yishu b'shok. You find the get of a woman in the street. Bisman shabal moide. If the husband agrees that it belongs to his wife, yachsel isha, give it back to her. Ein abal moide. If the husband does not agree, then lo yachser, lo yelazeh, lo yelazeh. You don't give back this get, not to the woman and not to the man. So what do you see here in this Braise? Katani mi is the Braise clearly says Bisman shabal moide. If the husband agrees that you should give the get back to the woman, yachsel isha. You do give it back to her. And it doesn't make any distinctions about this. That means afil is man merube, even after a long period of time. So you see here, you're not concerned that this get may have belonged to another person that has an identical name. That was the way Rab Zayda asked this stira. So again, the point here is, instead of asking the stira from the Mishnah in Gittin to the Mishnah here in Bava Metzia, he asked it from the Mishnah of Gittin to a Braise. The Gemara is soon going to explain this. Why did he ask it after from that Braise? Now, what did Rav Zayda answer to this question? Umishani, he answered like Rabbi answered before. In a case that there's a lot of people there, so you're concerned that it might have fallen from someone else. And over here we're talking about a get that fell in a place that there's not a lot of people there in this Braise, so therefore you can give it back to the woman. Now the Gemara addresses whether Rav Zayda agreed to Rabbi's second condition as well. Rabbi said that there has to be another detail in order to be concerned. Only if it's a city where it's Hochsaku Shnei Yisub and Shimon, when you know that two people have the same name. So there are those that say that he agreed to Rabbi. Only if it's a place where you know that there are two people with the same name. Then I say that you can't give back the get to the woman. And the Rabbi. In other words, he agreed to Rabbi. But there are those that say that Rav Huna disagreed with Rabbi. And he said, even in a place where you don't know for sure that the city has two people with the same name, if it's a place where the get fell, there's a lot of people coming and going there, could have fallen from someone else, and you can't give back the get, and he argues on Rabbi. Okay, so now the Gemara addresses the way Rabbi asked the stira and the way Rab Zayda asked the stira. Rabbi, he asked the stira between the Mishnah in Bava Metzia to the Mishnah in Gittin. So that's understood. Because if you see a contradiction, it makes more sense to ask a contradiction between a Mishnah and a Mishnah than to ask from a Braisa. A Mishnah is much more trustworthy. So why would you ask from a Braisa? However, according to Rab Zayda, my time alone, why didn't he ask the contradiction like Rabbi? Why did he ask from a Braisa? So the Gemara explains, Omalach, Rab Zera will answer you that the stira from our Mishnah here in Bava Metzia, that's not a question. Because in our Mishnah, what did it say in our Mishnah? That you don't give back the get that's found. Why? Because maybe the husband changed his mind not to give it. It didn't ever clearly say in our Mishnah that when the husband is there and he agrees that you should give it back to the woman, that you can give it back. That's just a diuk of our Mishnah. It doesn't say it clearly in our Mishnah. So therefore, Rab Zera will tell you as follows. Okay, so Ela Rab Zera, my time alama karaba, Amalach, Rab Zera will tell you, Mi katani. Does it say in our Mishnah, Ha amatnu naisnen? Does our Mishnah clearly say that if the husband says, give it back to this woman, you give it back? Va filu is man merube? And then if the Mishnah would say such a statement and wouldn't make any distinctions, then I would say it means that you give it back even if it fell and it was lost for a long period of time. And then you would have a contradiction to the Mishnah in Gittin. It doesn't say that clearly in our Mishnah. It's just a diak that we made. So Dilme, maybe you have to be medayik from our Mishnah. Ha amatnu. If the husband says, give back the get to the woman, nice, no, we give it to her. But still, when you give it back, like it says in the Mishnah of Gittin, only la'alter, if it was found immediately, not if it was found later. So therefore, from the Mishnah over here in Bava Metzia, it's not a stira to the Mishnah in Gittin. That's why Rab Zera didn't ask from there. He asked from the Braisa. And the Braisa said a clear halacha. If the husband says, give it back, you give it back. The Mishnah, the Braisa that is, didn't make any distinctions. Okay, so now the Gemara says as follows. According to the opinion that we said before, that according to Rab Zera argues with Rabbe, as long as the get fell in a place where there's a lot of people there, coming and going, even if the place where the get was written is not a city where we know that there are two people that have the same name, he argues with Rabbe. Rabbe holds that you're only concerned if there's both. It's a place where a lot of people come there, and also the city has two people with the same name. But Rab Zera holds no. Even if you don't have that chazakeh, as long as there's a lot of people traveling here, you still have to be concerned. So there's a machlokes here. Says the Gemara b'mai kamiflagi. What is the source of their machlokes? So the Gemara explains it's based on the Mishnah that we quoted here before. The Mishnah says that kol ma'ase bezdin. Again, I'm sorry. Rabbe Sova, Rabbe holds the Ketani. The Mishnah says kol ma'ase bezdin. Anytime you have a shtar which is certified by the bezdin, hareze yachser. You can give it back. And that includes also regarding a get, that you can give it back if the get fell. Now the Rabbi understood that what this means is the ishtakach bebezdin askinan, that this get, which was certified by the bezdin, was found probably where? In the bezdin itself. Now ubezdin kamakim shashayaris mitzuyes. A bezdin itself is the place where there's a lot of people coming and going. So therefore, over here it says that you can give it back. Right? So so therefore, you're going to have to say that when is it that you don't give it back? That's only if you know for a fact that in the city where the get was written, there are two people that have the same name. But lo yuchsaku, if it's a place where you don't know that there's people that have the same name, yachser, then this Mishnah here is saying that even if there's a lot of people there, you could still give it back. So again, the point is, Rabbah understood the pshat in that Mishnah that it's talking about that the get was actually found inside the bezdin, where there's a lot of people coming and going, and it's still saying that you can give back this get. But Rab Zera however, Rab Zera will tell you that's not how you have to understand that Mishnah. Mikatani kol ma'ase bezdin. Does it say in the Mishnah that any star that was certified by a bezdin shenimtzu bi bezdin? And does it say in the Mishnah that this get was actually found inside the bezdin? It doesn't say it was found inside the bezdin. Kol ma'ase bezdin yachzer katani. All it says in the Mishnah is that if it was certified by the bezdin, you give it back. But when could you give it back? Only if it was found outside the bezdin, in a place where there's not a lot of people traveling there. But if it's a place that there's a lot of people traveling there, by a get, you won't be able to give it back because maybe it fell from someone else's possession. And this is even in a case where we don't know for a fact that the city where it came from, there's two people with the same name. Now the Gemara goes back to the original contradiction that we had regarding this get that fell and was lost for a long time. Do we give it back to the woman or not? From our Mishnah, it's mashma we do, and in the Mishnah in Gittin, it says that you don't. The Gemara here now brings another two answers for this. Rabbi Yirmiyah answers and says that regarding what it says here, that you give it back even after a long time. When is that? Kagoin, the Ka'omri Edim, when the Edim that signed this get, they say, we never signed in a get with the names that it's written here on this get, Yosef ben Shimon. We only signed on one name with such a get. So there's no reason to be concerned even after a long time that maybe there was another get from people in that city that have the same name, because the Edom are telling us we only signed a get with one time with this name. What's the chiddush then in such a case you could give it back? So the Gemara says there is a chiddush here. Maybe I should say and be concerned. Maybe, just like there's a possibility that there are the husband and wife that have the same name, maybe there's another two Edim that also happen to have the same name. Very uncommon, but maybe we would have thought to be concerned about this. Kamash Malon, that's why it's telling you that no, we're not concerned about such a thing. Another answer the Gemara says, Ravashi says in our Mishnah, when it says even after the get was lost for a long time, you can give it back to the husband or to the wife. Reason is, it's in the case where the husband says, he's giving a simon. He says, this guy has a hole near this and this letter. So because he's giving such a clear simon, we're not concerned that maybe it fell from someone else and it has the same name. We can give it back to the woman. Now the Gemara clarifies what Ravashi was saying here. V'dafke b'tzad ois ploinus. The simon has to be that he's saying that it has a hole right near a specific letter. That's a very, very strong simon. He knows exactly which letter it has a hole in. Avol nekev ba'alma. If he comes and says, "I'll give you a simon for this get," it has a hole in it. That's a simon, but it's not such a strong simon. That's not. There's two kinds of simana. That's what's called a simon muvhak, something which even minatayre is clearly a simon. Or then there's a simin which is not so clear. So if it's a nekev ba'alma, if he just says that it has a hole, loy, then you can't rely on that. You can't give back the get. Now the Gemara explains why. Ravashi misapkele, because Ravashi had a suffix, and this is a discussion later here in the Masechta and Bava Metzia. Simonin, the whole concept that you give back any Metzia with a simin. If it's not a simin muvak, if it's not a very, very strong simin, either iraisa, the fact that you give it back, is this minatayre that you give it back? Either abanon. Or maybe only this is only a takana midrabana that you give it back. And if it's only a takana midrabanan regarding money matters, chachamim were masaking you give it back. But regarding a get, where it could be an issue of eshes ish, in such a case, the chachamim's takana does not apply, and therefore you can't give back the get unless he gives a very good simon that it has a hole at a specific letter. And that's what our Mishnah was talking about when it says you can give back the get.